tell the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
All right. All right. Questions on behalf of Mr. Taylor?
Thank you, Your Honor. I just need to connect to the,
Okay.
I don't have enough room. Is it on here? I'm not technically savvy, so. Okay. I can just use that. Don't worry about it. I don't want to hold them up, so I can just use that. Good morning, Dr. Midthun.
Good morning.
I'm just going to go back and forth, so I just rather use this one. I was speaking with her. To make it show there. How do I make it show?
Hit up Will.
Good morning, Dr. Midthun. How are you?
Good morning.
Good. I wanted to talk with you a little bit about the work that you performed at NMS, and specifically the work that you performed in this case.
Okay.
Could you tell us, or at least tell the jury, exactly what accreditations for NMS are important in terms of the things that you have to do at your lab in order to be accredited?
NMS has a number of accreditations because we work with so many different types of agencies, laboratories, and because we also do both clinical and forensic toxicology. So the primary accreditation I believe you're referring to is through ANAB, and it's to a standard called 17025. So ANAB stands for, it's a mouthful of acronyms, but ANSI, ASB, National Accreditation Board. And so what this entitles is that 17025 is a standard set forth on testing laboratories. It dictates rules on how the entire lab needs to be run, really. Rules and regulations on qualifications of the people who work there, the types of records we need to keep, how testing needs to be performed, documentation, things of that nature. So to be accredited, the laboratory agrees to these rules and agrees that they'll adhere to those rules and agrees to undergo surveillance and on-site assessments periodically, where outside agencies and individuals will come in and assess us to those standards and ensure we are meeting all of those standards. So that's the major and primary one, but in addition to the ANAB 17025, we're also CLIA accredited, which is a accreditation through hospitals and clinical samples. We work with the College of American Pathologists, or CAP, which specifically refers to more post-mortem type samples. And some states have their own individual requirements, and so we also meet those standards and accreditations and certifications for those individual states.
Thank you. Now, are there certain factors that the ANAB require from you in order to keep your accreditation? And what I mean by that is, let's say chain of custody. Is that something that is required in order to be accredited?
Chain of custody is part, yes, of ANAB standards.
And specifically when we're talking about forensic toxicology, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And that's one of the things that are extremely important.
Yes.
And what about storage in terms of ensuring that whatever vial or matrix, and we learned yesterday that matrix could be blood, urine, semen, whatever it is. What about the storage in terms of being refrigerated? Is that required, that it's stored properly?
It's required that you have a policy and procedure for the storage of your samples. The individual storage needs will vary based on the matrix.
Right. Let's say blood. How would you store blood properly to keep your accreditation?
So that's going to be based on your policy, and it can vary from whether you're talking short-term storage versus long-term storage. So short-term storage for most agencies is that the sample is still in the process of testing or may be tested very soon and readily. Long-term storage may involve being frozen.
Okay. When you, let's say it's a week to a month, would you store blood in a refrigerator?
Typically it is stored refrigerated, yes.
Are there ever times for a month that blood should not be stored in a refrigerator?
I mean, when you take it out to test it, it's going to be at room temperature.
Well, I'm talking about for a month long. Let's say you're not testing it, you're not doing anything with it, and it's a month period that you're not doing anything with it. Should it be in the refrigerator?
Ideally, it would be good to keep it cold, but the actual individual rules are going to vary agency to agency. A month may be a frozen capacity for some agencies. For NMS, it's typically while that sample is in testing, and for a short time after testing, it will remain cold and refrigerated. If it is deemed to go to long-term storage, it then typically gets moved to a freezer at some point.
Okay, and I'm not talking about when it's being tested. I'm talking about when it's just waiting. You know, it may be, don't destroy it because we may need it later, and a month passes. The best practice is for it to be refrigerated and or frozen. Would you agree?
Cold, yes. Cold. I would agree cold.
Thank you. And that's very important in terms of the integrity of keeping that sample, correct?
Yes.
And then what about sealed? Making sure that whatever vial and or cup or tube, that it's sealed with an initial so that it cannot be tampered with and to maintain the chain of custody. Is that important?
Sealing is important, but that definition varies agency to agency. So seal can be just tape over the top of a tube or over a container. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's dated and initialed.
Okay.
But just making sure that the container is properly closed. The cap is on tight and tightly twisted if it's a screw top cap. Just ensuring that it is tightly enclosed is really the key there. Whether it has tape over the top, it doesn't impact my testing. It could impact the interpretation depending on what happens to it. But
I understand that's not you guys' problem, but I want to just make sure that the jury understands whether or not the best practice is for that vial to be sealed. Sealed in terms of the tape on top of it.
And that's going to vary agency to agency, though. Those rules are independently created at those agencies, whether it has to be sealed or not sealed.
Okay. Well, as a forensic toxicologist, would you say that the best practice is for it to be sealed?
I would say that it's recommended. I wouldn't say it has to be the end-all be-all best practice, but it is recommended to be sealed because it helps with chain of custody. It helps answer some of those questions, but it's not necessarily required. It's recommended.
But it is recommended.
It is recommended.
And why is it recommended that a vial should be sealed?
As I just stated, it helps assert chain of custody. It helps assert that nothing has happened with that tube. It hasn't necessarily been opened since the time that that sticker or tape has been placed over the top with the in theory, some sort of date or initial on it.
Okay, I want to draw your attention. And Josh, could you tell us which exhibit this is? The state's exhibit, the vial of blood. In regards to the vial of blood that goes with litigation packet, NMS work order, ending in, well, it's 231268889. Do you see that there?
The NMS number?
This is the NMS number for the vial of blood for 231268889.
Yeah, I just don't see the NMS number on
You
this
don't, do you?
on this
No.
stick. Not from this view.
Right.
Okay.
And in regards to this, do you know, based on looking at this, where this came from?
I mean, I know from my review of all of the casework thus far,
Okay.
because of being involved in the case, I know that this was that MyOte VUH Stat Feb
Okay.
was the name assigned to the patient when they were at Vanderbilt.
And you see that there's a collection date there of, can you see it from?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Collection date of 2/25/23. Do you see that?
I do see that.
Okay. And prior to it getting to NMS, you don't know where that vial of blood was, do you?
Correct.
You don't know who drew the blood?
Correct.
You just rely on whatever sticker is placed on it. Isn't that true?
Initially, we rely on the requisition form, and we match the information from the requisition form to any stickers or information provided on the tube to verify that they go with the same case.
But in regards to the individual who drew that blood and put the sticker on there, you don't have any knowledge of that, do you?
Correct.
And so you have to rely on what's there. Isn't that true?
Correct.
I want to now draw your attention to litigation packet 231268889. That's in evidence. And it is in evidence as Exhibit 42. And I want to draw your attention to pages 25 through 27 of that litigation packet. And I have a copy here for you.
Sheets, yeah.
Okay. Do you see where it talks about the sample information on here?
Yes.
And when it comes to whether or not this vial of blood was sealed, what is the answer that NMS states here?
Upon arrival, it was not sealed.
Okay. And so that would not be the best practice according to your prior testimony. Isn't that true?
It's going to vary agency to agency. So if that agency's policy is not to seal it, then this would be fully fitting in with that agency's policies and procedures.
And then as we go further along to the other portion of the sample, when it comes to being sealed, what does it say?
No sample seal.
And if there's been testimony that there's no one who knows who drew that blood, did not know where it was prior to getting to the ME's office, would you say that that is reliable and credible in regards to who this vial of blood belongs to?
Objection, Your Honor. Mistaking evidence. Thanks, someone testify to
Is
that.
it in the medical records?
The vial of blood here? We don't know, Your Honor, because we don't know who pulled it.
Is who pulled it in the medical record?
Okay.
I'm just asking.
Yes, it's in the medical records.
Okay.
However,
I'll sustain the objection.
but if we don't know, or if that person has not testified in regards to, yes, that was the blood I pulled, yes, I put the correct name on there, would you as a forensic toxicologist who keeps accreditations and ensures that chain of custody and those types of things are important, would you think that that is reliable and credible to rely on?
It's not going to impact my testing.
Sure. I'm just
It may impact the interpretation, but it's not going to impact my ability to test that sample and produce accurate and reliable toxicology results. So I think your question is asking more about interpretation, and yes, it could impact the interpretation. I would have to say it's possible something may have happened to it. I don't know, that's beyond my control, but it doesn't impact my ability to test that sample.
Right, and I didn't ask about the ability to test it, just whether or not as a forensic toxicologist that would have been the best practice to maintain the chain of custody as well as making sure that it's sealed. That's all I'm asking.
Objection, Your Honor. The chain of custody was maintained.
Yeah, no, it was not. And so I just want to ask the witness the question.
You won't argue back and forth.
So,
Sustain the
fair enough,
objection.
Your Honor. In regards to the testing of litigation packet 889, you, in fact, at some point signed off on that, did you not?
I did.
Okay. You weren't the one, though, would you agree with me, who actually performed the testing?
Correct.
Can you tell us what is required in the actual testing of that vial of blood for 889?
Do you have the report that I could refer to?
I can. I want to give you, specifically I'll draw your attention to page 37 of that same litigation packet. Would the procedures here be an example of what has to be done when you are testing a vial of blood?
So this is a summary of what you have shown. This is a summary specifically of the cocaine testing that was performed, and it's highlighting the major steps in our computer system that are signed off on. So for each attempt at testing on that sample, there's a preparation step. That's the person that prepares that sample physically, loads it onto the instrument. There's an analytical step. So that's the person who's actually reviewing that data initially as it comes off of the instrument to ensure that the run is proceeding as expected, the controls are performing as expected, the run is acceptable. And then there is a final review step. It has the abbreviation BREV there. So that is a secondary technical review by another authorized analyst who also went back and reviewed that data and ensured the accuracy of the result in the run.
Okay, and then I want to take you a little further down where it says lab ID test. Now, is that more testing on that same vial of blood, or is this a different test?
It's a different test. You can see in that gray band there, the test name was designer opioids. So that first block was for cocaine testing. This second block is a designer opioids test.
And just so that we are aware, fentanyl is not a designer opioid that would be tested for. Is that correct?
It was not included in the scope of that specific test.
Okay. So you weren't testing for fentanyl here on either one of these, correct?
Not the physical lone fentanyl compound. This designer opioids panel includes what we call fentanyl analogs. So they're related to fentanyl, but they're not physical fentanyl. They are separate drugs entirely.
Correct. And then I'll take you down to where it says liver tissue. Here, that's another test that was performed as a result of the litigation packet 889, correct?
Yes, just to be clear though, this first band where it says tissue requires homogenization, this is a process step. So We can't physically test a piece of tissue. We can't put that on an instrument. It would clog up the instrument. We need to create a format for it so that it's liquid and can actually be put onto an instrument. So homogenization is just the kind of fancy term for saying that it was blended. We usually add some liquid or buffer, water buffer, and homogenize it and create it in a format that is more liquid and is more easily and readily available to go onto the instrument.
And it is a process and a step in the series of testing this liver, correct?
Correct, and that's why you see, if you go down below that very final gray line down there, when we do that homogenization, we actually create a new container and a new ID because we didn't use the full liver tissue that was submitted. We only cut a portion of it to create a homogenized sample.
And so all of those things are required in order to reach a result for that vial of blood and that liver tissue, correct?
For this case, yes.
Okay. And then after that, once you guys complete those entire processes, everything that was done, every test, every run, all of that is created in a litigation packet. All of it is documented in a litigation packet form, right?
Yes.
Now, when you signed your name to this toxicology report, you didn't do this particular testing, did you?
Correct.
You then relied on the individuals who did the testing in regards to what they purported their testing, the results of the testing that they performed.
They're not reporting it. I'm looking at the data generated out of the instrument. I mean, so they aren't reporting it to me. I'm physically looking at the data myself and ensuring that I agree with the result that's on that data page.
So who reports the data?
I report the final data. I create that final report.
And you have to create that final report based on the testing of those individuals, correct?
Yes.
And those individuals would be the individuals whose names are here.
Yes.
Paulina Lapp, Stacy DeJoseph, Kyle Miller, Amanda Cook, Rebecca Turner, and Tammy Welch in regards to the vial of blood, correct?
Yes.
And you rely on what they did in order for you to interpret their data.
Yes.
What all do you have to do in order to interpret that data to then sign your name and co-sign on whatever results they find?
Are you asking specifically? What are you asking me to explain there?
Before you sign your name to that report, what do you have to do? What process do you go through?
So I review all of the paperwork for the case. I look at the case results and the case data. I also look at, there's a summary sheet that comes up for each run that's performed. It's a summary that the analysts write up as a result of each batch. So say a control issue happened, they will note that on there. So I can review the control samples if I see an issue and I want to investigate it. I look at the chain of custody. I look at the login verification form, that form that said whether the sample was sealed or not. I also look at the posting history form, which is that form she just showed you where it lists the names of the analysts. So if I saw an issue in any of the data I was looking at, I can go back and physically talk to that analyst. I can email them or message them. If I see an issue on any of the runs, I have the autonomy to investigate. I can ask that a test be reperformed. If I don't agree with a result or I'm questioning a result, I have that autonomy just from doing the review of the sample. And then I also look at the requisition forms that's received. So I look to see what the agency requested, what testing. I ensure that all of that testing was performed and all the pieces of those tests are performed. Or if they couldn't be performed, I understand why. If something needed to be canceled, if there was an interferent, things of that nature. In addition to that, I also look at phone log notes. And our phone log communication notes are Notes provided by our client services. So if the client called in, added on testing, if something needed to be verified on the requisition form, if there was a typo or a misspelling that we caught during our process, it should be indicated there if the client was contacted about it. And so I'm checking all of those pieces to make sure things are accurate so that my report is accurate to the information we were provided.
And about how long would you say that process takes?
It varies depending on how much testing was performed on a case. It really does.
And in regards to litigation packet 231268889, about how long would you say that process took for you to review all of that data, adopt it, and then sign your name to it?
We had discussed this previously in previous meetings. Based on timestamps, it looked to be an hour or just under an hour, but I do question whether the timestamp on the note requesting that I review the case is an accurate portrayal of when I was first asked to review the case. It had been discussed that I may have to review this case previously, so I had been looking at the case and the case data prior to the official request coming through. So I'm not clear exactly how long it took me. It may have been less than an hour, only because I had previous experience with the case.
And so in this case, the litigation packet was 1,912 pages, correct?
The full litigation packet, that's yes, what you had relayed.
Okay. And I've taken the liberty to print it out, and I have it right there on my table. That's about the litigation, that's the 1,912 pages.
Okay.
Right? Okay. And you reviewed all of that and all the processes that you just described in under an hour.
No, I said I reviewed the case data and the batch review sheets. So by the point it reaches me, the case has undergone numerous levels of review at each test step. So my piece of the puzzle is that final review, pulling all of those pieces together. Each individual test has been reviewed and signed off on at that test level, and then it reaches myself. And so I'm performing an overview review, looking at the individual case data, ensuring that each of the batches, if there were issues or if I needed to investigate, I looked into them, but that all of those pieces for that individual case are matching up. Your litigation packet is going to include a lot of extra information, including all of the data for the quality controls that were run, the full list of cases that were on each batch, along with the case in question. So that is partly why my review takes less time. I'm focusing just on a single case, not the full batches each time.
Then it will require you to rely on summaries done by the individuals who actually performed the testing.
Right, and as part of accreditation, if any issues come up, those analysts are authorized and competent and trained in each of their individual tests, and they have to follow those standard operating procedures. So they would physically have to note that something happened, or that something went awry, or that they saw an area of concern, and then it had to be vetted and evaluated, or the proper step followed. So say a quality control failed, they would follow the standard operating procedure, which may be to re-inject the sample, it may be to repeat the whole test. It varies depending on what the issue is, but they're following their standard operating procedures, they're following their training.
I need to blow this up, and I don't want to hit a button I shouldn't hit, so.
Expand it, you mean?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, technically, there you go. We see here in this litigation packet, here's your number, 231268889, that in preparation for trial on March 12th of 2026, there was an email received from Eric Evans providing a subpoena for MMR to appear the week of 6/22/26. Who is MMR?
She was the original reviewer for the case.
Okay. And we see then that on March 19th, which would be about 7 days later, there was an email received from ADA Jan Norman asking that the case be placed in the queue for KYM for review. Who is KYM?
KYM is my computer initials
Okay.
for using our computer system.
Okay, so that's you.
That is me. Yes.
And then we see on 3/20 that there was an updated report signed by KYM, which is you, and a current CV provided to ADA Norman, correct?
Correct.
And then if we look at, I'm sorry, can you notate the time on March 19th that the email from Ms. Norman came through, from ADA Norman came through?
That's when this was recorded in this communication log. I don't know when the actual email was received from ADA Norman.
Okay.
It may have been earlier in the day.
Okay. So what time do we have there?
The time on this communication log says 2:02 p.m. So that's when it was entered onto this communication log.
And here is your report and work order for 23126889. That is your signature, correct?
That is my signature, yes.
Adopting the findings in litigation packet 231268889, correct?
Correct.
And what time is that there?
14:55.
And that's military time, which would equate to 2:55.
Correct.
So between the time that it's documented on this email at 2:02, we're talking about 53 minutes.
Again, the communication log that was noted at 2:02 p.m. I don't know physically when ADA Norman sent the email and client services received it. It's possible they received it earlier in the day and they notified me that this was coming down the pipeline, and I may have been reviewing it earlier. That just may be the time that they physically documented it in the communication log. We document things in the communication log when we're able to. I sometimes it's a couple hours after I have a phone call with someone. It's not necessarily right at the moment that call occurs.
But there's no documentation to anything like that here, is it?
They're documenting appropriately that they received communication.
And if you look up, it documents 114 to discuss timelines. Received email from Tracy Houston. It doesn't give another date, does it?
Another date for what?
Different than the date that's on the side here of 120, in this instance, 123:26.
It occurred that day. It may not have occurred simultaneously at that time.
I now want to draw your attention to litigation packet 230-86183. You also were not the analyst who reviewed this test originally, are you?
No, I'm not.
And this, just so that we're clear, is a test of the antemortem blood of Ms. Jade Benning that was taken on 2/27/23 at 2:17. Do you see that?
I do.
And again, you were not the analyst who originally performed this testing, were you?
I didn't perform the testing, and I was not the original reviewer.
And if we look at the date and time that you adopted this particular testing procedures, it was the same day at the same time of 2:55, correct?
Yep.
And are you familiar with how many pages of litigation packet is this particular testing?
It was even more. There was more testing involved with this case.
Over 2,600 pages, correct?
I'm not sure the total value that was in your packet, but there was a lot more testing to review for this one, yes.
And would you trust me if I tell you it was 2,616 pages?
It would not surprise me.
And so from the time that you were asked to be assigned to these cases, within 52 minutes, based on the documentation, and we have to go by the documentation according to the accreditation, you reviewed all of that data, 2,600 pages in one, 1,900 pages in another, in 52 minutes.
Again, I reviewed the case-specific data, which is significantly less than the 2,600 pages and the 1,900 pages. I reviewed the specific data generated to the case. And I was aware of these cases. We have been working with both of you individually since, this has been going for more than a year. So I have reviewed these cases in the past. The reason for both of them having the same stamp time for my release is because I put them on a batch together, and I released the batch at 14:55. So that's why it looks like they both have the same stamp. I was reviewing both cases. I leave them to the side, and when I finished reviewing both cases, I click a signature button in our computer system, and it releases both cases together off of that batch at the same time. So that may help explain why they have the same release time.
And we basically, though, we have to rely on the data that's in the paperwork, right?
It's
Yes or no, ma'am?
It's a communication note, noted by someone else, not myself.
And there's no communication notes whatsoever that you reviewed this document and or paperwork and or testing at any other time. There's no documentation of that anywhere, is it?
I mean, other than the communication note that we've been discussing these cases, I don't believe there's anything specifically noted, no.
I now want to draw your attention to the testing of the comforter. And that work order is 23129285. And I believe it's in evidence. Do you have that? Exhibit number 9285, last four digits, 9285. Just so that the record is clear what we're referring to. This is exhibit
46 is her report on that.
Yes, this is exhibit 46. And this is the comforter that we've been talking about, correct?
Yes.
And the testing that you performed on that comforter, there was some talk yesterday about numbers and concentration levels and things of that nature. You can't quantify anything in regards to any concentrations or anything like that as it pertains to the results on this comforter. Is that correct?
Quantitation should not be done, no.
And so anything that was said to the jury about how much was found of BZE and or cocaine, none of that should be considered because that's not what the purpose of the test was. And you guys don't do that in regards to this type of testing. Is that correct?
I would say it's fair to say that we needed to repeat the testing under dilution to ensure the accuracy of the result, but to rely on a specific number would be inaccurate. So the testing was repeated on dilution to ensure that all of our acceptability criteria was met for the data. When we ran it undiluted, some of the acceptance criteria was not met, which is why we had to repeat the test. But to rely on a specific number, I would not rely on a specific number from that, the values generated there. It was really to prove that the presence of the drug and that the results were accurate, there were no interferences going on, and that our acceptability criteria was met in order to confirm that it was positive.
Okay, I just wanted to clear that up, for
Yep.
the jury. Thank you. Again, we talked about labeling and doing things like that. I want to draw your attention now to the labeling for the washcloth. Do you remember testifying yesterday about the washcloth?
Yes.
Okay. And do you see the date there that it says, date and time, that this washcloth was received by Metro Nashville Police Department?
Objection, Your Honor, there's been testimony specific to this.
It's an item in evidence, Your Honor, that she can testify to.
Okay, there was testimony about why that's there. If you want to re-ask her, that's fine.
What is the date and time that you have that Metro Nashville Police Department received this washcloth?
I mean, so the label states February 25th, 2023 at 9:30 p.m.
Were you aware that Mr. Taylor did not call 911 until February 25th, 2023, at 9:38 p.m.?
The exact time I don't believe I was aware of.
I want to now draw your attention to the packaging for the comforter that we talked about. Do you see the time that it was received there? Can you read that for the jury?
The label states February 25th, 2023 at 9:30 p.m.
How important is it to document accurate times and dates and things of that nature?
I mean, it is as accurate as we can be. We try to maintain contemporaneous notes and labels with things. So it's important.
It's very important. isn't it?
Yes.
To maintain the integrity of the vials and the samples that you're testing, correct?
It is important.
In regards to the test that you performed on the comforter, there was no standard procedures at NMS for you to follow with the preparation of the matrix to be tested. Because I understand you guys have standard procedures for the testing. But in order to extract the matrix, there was no standard procedures, were there?
There is a standard operating procedure called forensic investigations, but due to the very nature of these, we don't know what material we're receiving. It's not specific to an item, like an item of clothing or a metal item or a wood item. Every one of these cases is very unique and different, but there is a general standard operating procedure dictating that we need to provide controls. We need to assess the sample. We need to try and take pictures when possible to document what we're seeing, what we're doing. Typically, we try to perform the extraction with methanol. But depending on the nature of the case, we do have autonomy to try and do the extraction with other chemicals if we believe the methanol may not work appropriately. It is a standard operating procedure, but it allows a lot of flexibility for the toxicologist performing it to use it as needed to the case at hand, because these are so rare and so unique and so individual to the case.
In fact, I think that you classified this as a unique case of something you had to create, correct?
It is unique. I handwrote all my notes as I was following that standard operating procedure to dictate specifically what I was doing for this case at this time. So you are showing some of my handwritten notes that I was taking contemporaneously while I was in the laboratory performing this.
But you'll agree with me, this is not something that's ordinarily done, is it?
It is not commonly performed. Our laboratory only does a handful of these, only maybe a couple a year. So it is very uniquely done.
And there are no peer reviews or any type of audits in regards to this particular testing that you created, is there?
I mean, so once I extract the biological fluid off of the sample, those samples are run under the normal test methods of the laboratory. Same type of testing as a blood or a urine sample. Really, the extra handling part is me extracting that biological fluid off of in this case, the comforter. In other cases, we've had clothing, we've had metal, we've had various items received at the laboratory, even bone testing, things of that nature. So it is going through a validated test method, and then me running these extra control samples are ensuring the acceptability of the extraction method, proving that I have successfully extracted drugs from that item of clothing at the same time.
However, you'll agree with me that extracting the very matrix that you're testing is one of the most important parts, right?
It's very important. We need to be able to separate the drugs from the matrix.
Exactly, and so that is the part that has not been peer reviewed.
I disagree.
Okay. This has been peer reviewed prior to you doing it by someone?
I'm not understanding your definition of peer reviewed.
As anyone, well, let me back up. When you are accredited, there has to be reviews by your peers that what you are performing is up to the proper standard. Is that right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, and so that's what I'm asking. That hasn't been done in regard to the extraction of the matrix from this comforter. No one peer reviewed it prior to you doing it.
The acceptability of the controls run in parallel proves that this worked correctly. That is the review process there. The controls run in parallel at the same time as the case sample are proving the acceptability of this method.
I understand, but that wasn't my question. It hasn't been peer reviewed by anyone prior to you doing it.
But that would be true of all cases and samples then in an extraction by your definition of peer review. If a blood test is run, there's no one peer reviewing that blood test at that exact time. We run those control samples in parallel, and that helps ensure the accuracy of the run, the accuracy of the result, the accuracy of the extraction.
Dr. Midthun, you're not saying that every other process at NMS, when you are reviewing that vial of blood, has not been peer reviewed. You're not saying that.
No, I'm not. That's why I'm saying your definition of peer reviewed is misleading. We have published on this process. There are other similar processes in toxicology that use very similar methods, something called dried blood spots. So it's blood that's dried onto a piece of thick cardstock paper, and then they will punch out those pieces of blood-soaked paper, release the blood and the drugs from that paper, and test that. That is a common toxicology test performed. It's also similar to things like sweat patches. So it's a similar technique used in a lot of other toxicology testing, and there are controls run in parallel there as well. And it's the accuracy of those controls that proves that the extraction process worked, the testing is working, that if drugs are present, I am able to pull those drugs out of that paper or fabric or whatever the matrix might be at that point, and perform accurate toxicology testing.
Well, let me use a better term. How about validated? Has it been validated? Yes or no, Dr. Midthun? Has it been validated?
What is it?
The testing procedure that you created to test that comfort, has it been validated prior to you creating it?
The test method is validated. It's the same test methods used in the laboratory.
Who validated it? If you just created it for this particular comforter, Then who validated?
I didn't create the test method. The test method is the instrument method and that process.
I'm speaking about the extraction of the very matrix from that comforter. I understand that once you test it, that's a validated peer-reviewed process. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to the method you created to pull the matrix from the comforter. Has that been validated prior to you doing it?
I'm not sure how to answer that question. It is the controls in parallel are proving it's working. We don't validate individually an extraction method. The extraction is usually part of the test method and procedure as a whole. So running those parallel controls and then running it on the validated test method, something that was developed in the laboratory and has run thousands and thousands of samples and worked accurately, that part has been validated, but as far as I know, we don't typically validate just an extraction portion of a procedure.
Okay. In regards to this particular test, and to that point, there were several things that were found on this comforter originally, wasn't there?
Are you referring to the pink kind of solid particles?
No.
Oh.
I'm specifically referring to the fentanyl that was found, correct?
You're referring to the findings, yes.
Mm-hmm. And the cocaine, correct?
Yes, yes,
And the BZE, correct?
yes.
But there were other things that were originally found as well, wasn't there?
You're going to have to reference that for me.
Do you remember receiving information in regards to some of the findings that was originally found on this comforter?
Yes, I was made aware. So there was an immunoassay screen performed originally, and it was a basic panel screen. So it looked for multiple drug classes. We discussed immunoassays yesterday, and they have some limitations involved. But I received information that on top of the cocaine and metabolites and then the fentanyl, we had some indications of positive results on both the methamphetamine plate and the cannabinoids plate. And I was asked if I wanted to pursue those findings. However, I did not spike the samples for the methamphetamine and the cannabinoids, so I can't trust the accuracy of that result. I don't have controls run in parallel at that time that can ensure me I am properly detecting cannabinoids and methamphetamine. It could be an interference from the fabric. It could be an interference from one of the buffers used. I just don't have something that can help me definitively separate out those results accurately. And I didn't have approval from the agency at that time to pursue cannabinoids or methamphetamine.
Why don't you have other controls to perform the further testing?
I wasn't asked to. We specifically follow what we were asked and requested to do, and in this case, the very specific notes made from the agency were asking us to pursue the cocaine and the fentanyl.
Okay, but prior to that, you stated I didn't have, notwithstanding them asking you to further test it, you just stated I didn't have the controls in order to do proper testing because the spikes weren't in. Why didn't you have those controls?
I didn't spike a low control sample and a high control sample with cannabinoids or methamphetamine. I only spiked them with the two drugs being asked for.
Okay. And so that's why you didn't have the controls?
Correct.
Okay. And so, but you did, at some point, this testing showed up that it was cannabinoids as well as methamphetamine on this very same comforter.
There were indications of it, but immunoassays are prone to false positives and false negatives. So without having proper controls there, you really can't make any determination on what those results mean.
And you just stated that you did not have approval from the agency to further test whether or not these findings were in fact true. Is that what you just stated?
Correct, because there is cost involved with all of these tests. I didn't spike with those samples, so in order for me to pursue that type of testing, I would have had to go back and create entirely new samples and basically repeat this test all over again. And so there are costs involved that the agency would have to approve.
Who was the agency, or what agency was it?
This was submitted through Metro Nashville,
The police department?
the police department.
And so, given that this was in fact a case where there was an investigation into a possible drug poisoning or drug overdose, did anyone from Metro Nashville Police Department reach out and say, hey, we need to know if these substances are in fact on this comforter because we want to know the truth? Did anybody reach out and ask you to go ahead and perform that test?
No, and also to be fair, I don't recall us having a conversation with them about the uncertainty of those results. When I went back and looked at the data, cannabinoids was positive in every single sample, including my external lab control, which indicates that it's likely due to something in the run, like the buffer that we once I extract, I reconstitute, it's called. I reconstituted the samples in a buffer. Something like that could be at play there, causing an interference with that screen. So I really was uncomfortable trusting anything with those results, knowing that it was likely some sort of an interferent. I did go back after our conversation and look to see if I ever had any sort of a communication with Metro Nashville, or if anyone in client services had one about these results. We could not locate that we had ever notified them or had a conversation with them about them. So they didn't ask me to pursue it, but they also, I don't believe, were notified that that was the case.
Were they ever notified that that was the case?
I don't believe so. I can't find any record that we had that conversation.
And so then, in a case as serious as this, no one looked further to ensure that that was either true or not true?
Not that I'm aware of. We were asked to focus on the cocaine and the fentanyl, and that is what we focused on.
Methamphetamines, that is a type of controlled substance as well, is it not?
There are rare prescriptions for it. They do exist, but typically it is an illicit substance.
And it would be in a Schedule II drug?
Oh, I'm not sure what it's scheduled as. Scheduling changes quite often. I try not to memorize them.
You're a forensic toxicologist who tests substances, and you try not to remember the schedules of the drugs you're testing?
I don't memorize them because they can vary by state sometimes as to how it's being applied. So I do not memorize the exact scheduling of the drugs because they do sometimes change as well. The FDA changes, or the Controlled Substances Act can change them from time to time. So I prefer to look them up when asked than to rely on memory for things like that.
Do you remember what schedule cocaine is in?
Off the top of my head, no.
Now, in regards to the comforter, there were other things that were found as well, wasn't there?
You're asking about the findings.
Yes, ma'am, the findings. There was a test for cocaethylene, wasn't it?
On the comforter?
Yes, ma'am.
It may have been included in the scope of that test.
Okay.
I believe so.
And just so that we're clear, we're talking about the vomit that was found on the comforter at Jade Benning's apartment. That's what we're testing, right? On litigation packet 231292885.
Okay.
No, I'm asking. I want to make sure that's what we're testing, the vomit.
Yeah, so I'm looking. It looks like the samples are listed here. There's one labeled SD, and then at the end of it, it says G1 1+99. And then there's a G1, 1 plus 9. So those are the dilutions.
Okay. So if we look at, and let me orient you. Well, let me do it a better way. This is going to be, I'm sorry, page 789 of the litigation packet. Do you see that 007?
Yes.
And just so that we are clear, .007 is the case sample. Do you see that?
Yes.
And the case sample will be the exact piece of fabric created with the vomitus on it, correct?
Yes.
There is a presence of cocaethylene, albeit it's not above the reporting limit, but it is present, correct?
Can you scroll to the right so I can see if the ion ratio is in?
It was in.
It was in. Okay.
Okay. So that means the presence of cocaethylene was there, wasn't it?
There are indications, yes.
But that wasn't reported in or told, was it? On your findings.
It was under the detection limit.
Wouldn't it have been, though, important to state that cocaethylene was present, albeit it was under the detection limit, but just so that we have a clear picture of what's going on? Wouldn't that be important?
But that would go against reporting standards.
There was also another finding. Page 450 of the litigation packet. This is for fentanyl, isn't it?
Yes, that's the fentanyl quant.
And you see where I've marked there. There was also a finding of fentanyl in the vomitus, correct?
Based on how low this is, I would want to look at the chromatography there and ensure it wasn't noise. That's very low.
Okay. But it was present, based on these findings here, right?
There is some activity in that window, but I would want to look at the chromatography to ensure that it was an accurate peak shape and that it looked consistent with kind of an accurate fentanyl response.
But if we looked at these findings, these reportings, it's present, isn't it? It's below the limit, but it's there.
Without looking at that chromatography, I don't want to make that statement because you can have noise in that window. You can have peaks and background noise in there, which will give you some of these low lingering values. So that is where we have multiple pieces of criteria for accepting a result.
So if this wasn't noise there, then it would, according to these numbers, it would be present.
There may be some indications of it there, yes. If the peak was acceptable, it looked visually acceptable.
Okay. And if it was, then not only if it wasn't, we'll verify that. There would not only be cocaethylene present in the vomitus, it would also be fentanyl.
Based on the totality of the case, I would say it potentially means presence of fentanyl across that comforter, just because we know that there was a fentanyl presence in that negative control located other places on the comforter. I can't necessarily state that it was in the vomitus itself.
Okay. And in fact, you're right. in another spot on that same comforter, in another place, you found fentanyl.
Yes.
And this was before Ms. Benning ever went to Vanderbilt, correct?
I have no idea when the comforter was collected.
Now, I want to now draw your attention to NMS work order 230-78883. If you look at the original report for litigation packet 230-7883, what is that representing in terms of the matrix here?
This is a urine matrix.
And what's the date on the collection of that urine matrix?
It was provided to us as February 25th, 2023 at 22:59.
However, there was in fact another report generated just some 10 days before trial started. Do you see that?
Yes.
And labeled corrected report. Do you see that?
Yes.
And in this report, dated 3/22/23, there was in fact a finding of fentanyl, correct?
Yes.
And this would have been in the blood of, in the urine of Jade Benning on 2/25/23 at 10:59 p.m., correct? According to this report.
The results didn't change. The only change to the report is the collection date and time. Correct.
Right. Because 10 days before we started trial, you issued another report that's your signature, correct?
It is my signature, yes.
On June 9th, 26th. And you issued another report with a whole nother date, correct?
This was based on the request of the DA's office. They had information stating that the original time provided on the requisition form was incorrect and had asked us to correct it to make the report accurate.
Now, a common practice in medical records and forensic toxicology and things like that is to not change dates and times and things of that nature, isn't it?
If changes are made, it should be noted or highlighted what the change is, but it does happen sometimes. Sometimes the name provided to us is misspelled or the wrong name's provided. Sometimes the requisition form is provided with an incorrect date or time. It happens a lot, especially in driving under the influence investigations. So we do get asked to do corrected reports with demographic information.
And I want to draw your attention to litigation packet 230-86183. And that is the report that we talked about earlier where you issued a new report as the new analyst simultaneously with the report ending in 889. You remember us talking about that earlier?
I do.
Now, the original date on this report is March 17th of 2023. You see that?
I do see it.
And there was a report issued prior to that on March 13th of 2013.
Yes, there was. It was a preliminary report, so testing had not completed.
Okay, so the 313 was the preliminary report, and then the final report would have been 317 of 23. Is that right?
Correct.
And you weren't the original analyst there, as we discussed.
I was not. Yes, I was not on the original reports.
And then you issued the corrected report on that one. Is that right?
Corrected in this case is my signature.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, and this, okay. So the only thing that was corrected was your signature in that report.
That was the only difference noted for that one, yes.
Okay. Now I want to draw your attention to, let me find it. Litigation packet 231-57452. Do you see the original date on this report?
So the original date would have been June 8th, 2023, and then the supplemental report was issued June 21st, 2023.
Okay. And let's, so that the jury is aware, there is fentanyl present in this report as well, correct?
So to clarify, this is the same urine sample from the report that had the corrected time. The difference here is that the original urine came in through Vanderbilt and came in as a clinical sample. During the course of the investigation, it was asked that the sample be transferred to the ownership of the Metro Nashville Police Department. And so when that happened, a new work order was assigned to that exact same sample. It's the same urine sample. And it was then entered in under Metro Nashville with additional testing added.
Okay. And the additional testing would have been the testing for the fentanyl?
You can see the 3 tests there. We were asked to test for cocaine, designer opioids, and fentanyl.
Okay. And that's the report for June 21st, right?
There was a original request.
You're speaking of this one, right?
Yes, on June 8th. And then the supplemental is the one on the 21st. So the supplemental, they asked us to do an additional test. And so supplemental refers to additional testing was performed.
Sure. And on June 8th, there was the presence of 4-ANPP, correct?
Correct.
And 4-ANPP is commonly known as an illicit form of fentanyl, isn't it?
That's misleading. It can be a natural metabolite of medical grade fentanyl. It can also be a manufacturing ingredient in the making of illicit fentanyl. It's the same drug either way. It's chemically very similar to fentanyl. So it can be present both as a metabolite or as some sort of a precursor material for fentanyl.
However, if it was a medical grade of fentanyl, we would expect to see norfentanyl as well, wouldn't we?
That was not included in the scope of the test that this 4-ANPP came from.
Well, then let's take a look at the 621. Because they did ask you to test for norfentanyl, didn't they?
Yes.
Okay. And that's where you see it here, right?
Yes.
Okay. But we still see 4-ANPP.
So the original results from the report on June 8th are still on there, and then you see the new results from the additional tests asked for.
And if we look at the collection of this urine from Ms. Benning, what is the date? Let's start here, on the report of June 8th of 2023.
So it was the date provided originally from the original submission from Vanderbilt. It was dated as February 25th, 2023 at 22:59.
And then on June 21st report, what is the date of the urine that was collected?
It's still the same date, February 25th, 2023 at 22:59.
And we talked earlier that you rely on whatever the matrix or the vial that is sent to you and the sticker that's placed there by the agency that sent it to you, correct?
To fill out this portion of the report,
Yes.
this is based on the requisition form. But if you see there's a note underneath with the status of the urine, it said it was thin and brown with a chunk. We also noted that there was some additional label sticker on that urine container. And this is something we do with forensic reports.
Now, let's talk about that. A brown chunk within urine. Urine is not commonly chunky, is it?
Not commonly, but you can see a wide variety of things in urine if you do enough urine testing. It can be different colors. It can have infectious colonies in it. If someone has an infection, there can be some pretty strange and unusual things in there.
But it also could be because it wasn't stored properly, and as a result, a buildup of bacteria or something formed within it as well, correct?
That's what I mean by colonies. There could be something in there, yes.
And then that would yield it questionable about whether or not we should even be relying on these tests, right?
How so?
If something is formed and created inside of the very matrix that we're testing and we're relying on something as important as this, bacteria shouldn't grow to the point that it becomes clunky, should it?
These are forensic cases at this point, and so they're a once-in-a-lifetime sample. So we get samples in a lot of different forms of decay, and it's the only samples we have available to test. So it impacts the interpretation of the results, but it doesn't impact our ability to physically test that sample, if that makes sense.
It does. However, the first time that urine was tested, there was no notation that a chunk was present, was there?
That is not part of the process for accessioning and inventorying a clinical sample. So it's possible it was there, it's just not part of that standard process. Clinical samples are treated differently than forensic samples. They undergo a different process.
I'm speaking about when it was originally tested with NMS.
Correct.
That urine was tested before, and there was no notation that there was a brown chunk in it.
It's not part of that. Notating something like that is not part of the inventorying and accessioning process on the clinical side.
Then why was it reported here if it's not part of the process?
Because now you've switched to forensic. You moved from Vanderbilt Hospital clinical sample, and then it was switched over, ownership, testing, responsibility there, to Metro Nashville PD, which is a forensic agency.
Okay, I'm sorry, I must have misled you as to what I was asking. I'm speaking about, for example, in litigation report 230788883, the same urine, there was no notation of a brown chunk, was there?
Correct. I believe I just answered that. This is the clinical sample. It is not part of our clinical inventorying process to make notations like that.
But you made it here.
That became a forensic agency sample at that point.
So it wasn't a forensic agency here?
Not due to the agreements with the samples and the testing ordered. We separate that accessioning process between a clinical sample and a forensic sample.
So are you stating that when Ms. Benning, when Metro Police Department sent you this blood and sent you this urine, that you didn't realize that it was for the purpose of an investigation?
Originally, no, it came through as a clinical sample and a clinical request from a hospital.
And so even though then what you're saying is that because it came from a hospital, if a brown chunk was inside of this very urine that you now had to homogenize, right? Because you stated earlier that you can't test a chunk of something. You have to unhomogenize it, right?
Correct.
And if you had to homogenize it, surely whether it was clinical or forensic, you would know that, wouldn't you?
The look and status of the sample on the clinical side is not noted as it is on a forensic sample. It's a different process. Clinical samples, there's a faster turnaround time. It's verifying that the unique either medical record code or whatever that patient ID code is matches what's on the tube, and then those samples are prioritized and run very quickly. They have a very quick turnaround time because usually it's a diagnostic request where medical treatment may be waiting on the results of that sample. So they are prioritized and put through very quickly. Forensic is taking your time more, documenting more, because there is that threat of possible litigation purposes down the road. So there is more documentation, and it is a different process from clinical. It's just due to the purpose of those tests and those samples.
And so you're testifying that if someone is in the hospital and there's a doctor somewhere waiting on the results of this test, and you had to homogenize it, you had a chunk found in that urine, you're stating that you would not let that doctor know, who's going to depend on your findings in order to what type of treatment he will give this patient, that you would not inform him that there's a chunk in it and it had to be homogenized. Is that what you're saying to the jury?
If at the time that sample came in and was accessioned on the clinical side, so accessioning is when it's first entered and inventoried, if the technicians in the receiving department deemed that the sample was unsuitable for the testing requested to be performed, they would actually cancel the request and say we can't do it. So they determined at the time that sample arrived, there was enough sample in the correct format to perform the testing requested.
Okay. And no notation of a chunk was present?
It's not part of that process.
Okay. Nonetheless, notwithstanding all of that, 10 days before trial, another report was issued, corrected report, correct?
Yes.
And that same urine, the date was changed to 2/26/9/22. Is that right?
Yes.
And you weren't the original person who created or performed this test either, right?
Actually, I was the original person that signed both that clinical and then this subsequent one, which is why I knew that it had been transferred ownership between the hospital to Metro Nashville PD. That is why they asked me to be the reviewer for this one, so that we maintained the same person throughout that chain.
Okay, so you were the one who elected not to put the brown chunk on the report.
No, it's just not part of the process for the clinical side. It is not part of our standard operating procedure. It is not noted for clinical samples.
Okay. I want to now take you to in the medical records for BUNC page 69 and 70. Do you see at the bottom of this page a collection of urine at 2259 for a urine drug screen? You see that?
I do.
And then you see another specimen collected, urine drug screen with ID numbers attached to it. Do you see that?
I see it.
And at the top of page 70, you also see 2259 urinalysis microscope. Do you see that?
I do.
That would coincide with the original documentation on those reports as it relates to the urine that NMS received for Jade Benning, would it not?
That was the original, yes, date and time noted.
And much like that, I would take you to page 116 of the medical records. Do you see where it says addendum cocaine screen from ARUP, which is the metabolite BZE resulted from 227 at 8:23 a.m. was positive? Do you see that notation?
I do.
And that would coincide with what I will mark as Defendant's Exhibit 3 of the ARUP result and the urine here. 227. Do you see that?
I do.
Much like we just saw with
Well, okay, we'll mark exhibit.
Oh,
They won't
okay.
be defense exhibit,
Oh, okay.
they'll just be in number.
And then finally, Dr. Midthun, we were able to, let's go back to the fentanyl. And remember you stated that you wanted to look at the windows and the peaks in the windows?
Yes.
You see that?
I do. You can see, so if you look across the top of the page, the D5 is our internal standard. So those are looking appropriate. If you look at the two on the right-hand side, we look at two separate ions when we're looking here. So the first is our target ion. The second one on the right is a qualifier ion. And we do see some slight indications here. This is a nice peak shape. It looks that nice bell curve shape. But you also do see that qualifier on the back side, it has a long tail on the right side. So it's not a great peak, but it does look to be a possible indication of fentanyl there. It is not background noise. It's a possible indication.
Correct. So there is a possible indication of fentanyl in the vomitus on the comforter of Jade Benning.
There's a possible indication from that sample swatch, yes.
Thank you, I pass it.
to need a couple of exhibits. Pass to the witness. Can we have exhibit 34 and 39?
Thank you.
Dr. Midthun, you've just been handed exhibits 34 and 39. Exhibit 34 should be the CFSRE report 00-92. And then exhibit 39 should be the NMS litigation packet that begins with a 15-page report. And I don't know if they left the post-it on the analysis requisition form.
It's still there.
And yesterday you testified to this on direct, and we kind of synced up the two NMS work orders on these two separate reports, and you said that they matched, correct?
Yes.
And then I asked you to look in the litigation paperwork so that you could verify the very specific specimen ID from Vanderbilt University Medical Center. And you were able to do that, and we talked about the specific barcode and that there was a specimen ID, and that was something very specific to this requisition form. Is that right?
Yes.
And this particular sample, that first urine at 2259, was sent to NMS, and NMS transferred it to CFSRE, correct?
Correct.
It wasn't tested at NMS. CFSRE did the testing on this particular sample.
Vanderbilt specifically called and told us not to test this sample, and specifically asked us to transfer it over to CFSRE. So the testing on it was canceled at the request of a doctor at Vanderbilt.
And yesterday we matched this up with the specific DUNC medical record with that specific specimen ID, so we know the exact time.
Yes.
And then on direct testimony, I did not ask you any questions about the NMS work order number 23078883 that then transferred to 231574552. I did not ask you any questions. We did not submit those reports. Is that correct?
I don't recall. There have been a lot of work orders. I don't believe so.
If it's not one of the exhibits, would you agree with me?
If it's not one of the exhibits, yes, I agree.
And so now I would like to ask that this witness be passed the first 6 pages of the litigation packet associated with 23078883. Last page, which is the 6th page.
Yes.
And on this, we have a requisition form that has that same date on it, but we are missing a barcode and a specimen ID on the requisition form. Is that correct?
Correct.
Which that is the thing that allows us to tell us which specimen this is.
It helps identify it, yes.
And so I'm putting up the requisition ID from on the left of the screen. We have the sample that was sent to CFSRE that was not tested at NMS with the barcode. And then we have on the right the one defense counsel was just asking you about. The state did not submit this testing. And we don't have a barcode, but we have the exact same date, time, and it almost looks completely identical. Is that correct?
Yes, they're very similar, yes.
And we know that This one on the left with barcode, that one you see FSRE, that is the one with the barcode and the specimen ID that matches the medical records. And that is what Dr. Podolewski testified to in the report that you have in your hand. It all matches up, correct?
Yes.
And this one on the right, it does not match up because it doesn't have the correct information, does it?
It doesn't have additional information.
And you were asked recently to update the report because the report had a collection time that we knew was incorrect.
Correct.
And so if anyone were to submit the NMS reports during this trial, the one thing we knew is that date and time was not right, and we did not want it reflected on the report that would go into evidence. Is that correct?
The original released reports were deemed to have the incorrect time, so yes.
Is it correct, Dr. Midthun, that we actually discussed that well in advance? It was just when we were getting close to trial, we realized the report itself had never been changed.
Yes, we've been discussing this since at least October of last year.
And part of that is why additional tests for fentanyl were run, just to ensure that that first urine and that first blood that only had cocaine in it, that everything was correct, and all the subsequent testing that has cocaine and fentanyl, that is all after medical treatment.
It was not always clear why they were adding extra testing at the time they were doing so. So now in the context and years later, having that information, it makes more sense. From my side, I only knew that they were asking us to add fentanyl at the time to verify if fentanyl was present. So in the context of time passing and understanding more of what happened here, it makes sense why more of that testing was added and why it was transferred over the way it was.
Okay, so we cleared that up. Let's go back to the comforter. You were asked a lot of questions about fentanyl on the comforter, and you said that that can be noise, and that if you had kind of that noise marker in multiple places, and you would not say that it meant there was any fentanyl connected to the actual sample that tested positive for cocaine.
I think to clarify, I don't feel that the fentanyl necessarily can be stated it was from the vomit. It could be on the comforter. It could have been on the fabric or the swatch. I can't draw a parallel and say that it was connected to the vomitus necessarily. It could be an artifact that was on the comforter because we have low levels in other locations in the absence of the cocaine.
And you said that that was a trace amount, correct?
It was a very low quantity, well below the detection limit.
And that could be from some type of external contamination.
Certainly.
And Ms. Holland spent a lot of time asking you about peer review, and I don't think we were really talking about peer review. Dr. Midthun, you actually have published on this process that you utilize to test the comforter, but actually this particular comforter and the testing that you did in this case. Is that correct?
It is one of the cases in a case series. Myself and other toxicologists with NMS who performed this type of unique testing, we did publish a paper last year. It has been, I guess, peer-reviewed or reviewed as part of the journal writing process and deemed acceptable by peers in our field.
And I would ask that the witness be passed a document, which you provided a copy of your published journal article during our discussions in preparation for trial.
Yes.
Which that was also provided to the defense counsel.
Yes.
And so the questions about your handwritten notes, that is your process. It is something that is unique because not very many people do it. Is that correct?
That's fair, yes.
And we've talked about the fact that many times that as a forensic toxicologist that you might do that re-review and create your own opinion, do the analysis again, have your own expert opinion, and then you recertify a report. But this process is very unique and specific. Is that right?
This one's very unique. I mean, it's still technically reviewed by another toxicologist who is authorized to do this type of testing. So I'm not just putting reports and results out there without other individuals looking over what I have done, the conclusions I have made, and technically reviewing them and administratively reviewing them to ensure the accuracy of that report that I put out.
And you did that particular testing. You did some other testing in this case, and we did make a request of you if you could come to be our one witness, so we wouldn't have to have a minimum of 3 people from NMS testifying about the same testing.
Correct.
And I think there's been a lot said of somehow that recently happened, but we started talking about that at the end of last year.
We did. To avoid having at least 3 individuals, potentially more, coming from the laboratory, we were trying to simplify and see if one person could come instead of multiple.
And I know that I don't email you directly. Tasha is kind of our go-between. But if I have an email from December of 2025 where Tasha said, we will go ahead and start that process, is it fair to say that you might have started analyzing things a little bit earlier?
Objection, leading.
Okay, do you want to show her some email? Do you know?
I don't know any personal communications between her and Tasha is in our expert services department, so it's a department devoted to helping and assisting us with court and with legal proceedings. And she has been heavily involved in communicating with the DAs, so it would not surprise me, but I don't know specifically what was stated in those emails.
Which, Dr. Midthun, in all of the testing, it is consistent that there is cocaine or its metabolites only in the first blood, the first urine, as well as the testing that you did on the comforter. And it's after Ms. Benning was in the hospital that fentanyl shows up in any of the samples. And that is all very consistent. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, Dr. Midthun.
Any other questions?
Yes, ma'am. Just so that we're clear, there was no medical professional from Vanderbilt Medical Hospital, University Hospital, that called you and said those dates for the collection of that urine for the drug screen is wrong.
No, the request always came from the DA's office.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Thank you. You can, what do you want her to do with this journal?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I think it can just be marked for identification. I didn't really have her go into a great detail about it.
Okay. I'll give that top document to the clerk. Mark it 48 for ID.
I'll risk this not.
Just give it to the state.
And I apologize, Judge, I thought we were just talking about the article. I would like the 6 pages entered as an exhibit.
Okay, litigation, first 6 pages, or like 49. All right, thank you, ma'am. You get stepped down to be excused.
Am I released or will
Will I be recalled?
Any reason this young lady needs to remain?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank
Thank you.
you. With the next witness, please.
Ms. Johnson, Ms. Michael Johnson.
Okay,